A little boy rode his bike down the street. The pastor on his daily walk was coming up the other way when the front tire of the bicycle flew off. "What the hell?" the little boy shouted in frustration. "Don't say what the hell," the pastor corrected the boy sternly. "Say God help me." The boy rolled his eyes, picked up his bike, and trudged back to his home. The next day, after his father fixed the bike, the little boy joyously rode out along the same street. The same pastor walked down the street coming up from the other direction. Right as he passed by the boy, the back tire of the bicycle flew off. "What the hell?" the little boy cried. The pastor shook his head, disappointed in the boy's foul language yet again. "Don't say what the hell," he chastised the boy once more. "Say God help me." The little boy glared at the pastor, then grabbed his broken bike and made his way back home. Once his bike was fixed yet again, the boy took it out for another ride. Up along the opposite way came the same pastor. As the pastor passed by, the bike fell completely apart. Both tires shot off in different directions. The chain came undone and got tangled around the pedals. Bolts flew, metal screeched. The pastor watched the boy expectantly. The little boy looked down at his bike, up at the pastor, and then he said, "God help me." The bike instantly flew back together, miraculously fixed, and the pastor said, "What the hell?" Welcome to CC Writes. My name is CC Lepke, and today we're learning about cyclical storytelling. Have you ever heard the idiom that good things come in threes? How about if you don't learn from history, then you're doomed to repeat it? One of the greatest survival mechanisms that humans have at their disposal is pattern recognition. It helps us recognize the signs of hiding predators, understand the best time to plant and the best time to harvest. It helps to categorize and understand the world around us. And it also helps us tell interesting stories. Not to be confused with the Dan Harmon plot circle, which is a completely different thing that I talk about in more detail here. Cyclical storytelling is a story where the end of the narrative mirrors the beginning. In some cases, a cyclical narrative has the same events happen on repeat throughout the story as the characters learn and change as a result of experiencing the same things over and over. Groundhog Day is a great example of this, as is my favorite episode of Stargate SG-1, which is actually just a retelling of Groundhog Day, but with Richard Dean Anderson. And who doesn't love Richard Dean Anderson? Today, I'm going over the necessary components of a circular story and how to get the most out of this really interesting plot structure. If you're a fan of irony, satire, or poetic imagery, then stick around because cyclical storytelling may be just the thing you need. When writing a cyclical story, here are some key qualities to keep in mind. The story has to end in the same place where it began. Your characters have to change over the course of your story. The middle of the story needs to connect the beginning and end, showing why things are different. You're going to want to use strong mirror images, well-established themes. In the middle of the narrative, you want to put characters, situations, or emotions on loop and use the events in the story to affect change in your character's behavior or mindset. I'll explain how that's best done. Let's start with your mirror images. These are the beginning and end of your story. They can be physically similar or situationally similar. Wizard of Oz starts off in Kansas, where Dorothy would do anything to go somewhere interesting, and ends in Kansas, where she was desperate to get back to after her wondrous adventure. That's a physical mirror. In Back to the Future 2, the story starts off with Marty and his girlfriend in the future, and Marty being goaded into a fight when someone calls him a chicken. At the end of the story, Marty is faced with a bully who wants to race and calls Marty a chicken, but Marty manages to keep his cool and avoid a disastrous future. This is a situational mirror. To write a cyclical story, you have to decide how you want your character to change over the course of the story, and then choose whether you want the mirror to be situational or physical. Pick the one that you think could best represent the changes that define your character in the end. In The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy went from wanting to escape Kansas to feeling like there was no place like home. A physical mirror is the best way to represent that change. In Back to the Future, Marty's change within his emotional intelligence, and so a situational change makes a lot of sense. You can even use both types by placing your character in a similar setting with similar events taking place around her, but with a different reaction to those events than before. The Perks of Being a Wallflower is a great example of this combination. What happens in the middle of your story should be a series of looping themes, emotions, or events that are directly caused by the story's beginning and give the main character the opportunity to grow. These loops have to make the main character see why they need to change and directly influence the changes that occur. In The Perks of Being a Wallflower, Charlie is released from a mental health center, goes to a party with Sam and Patrick, gets kissed by Sam, and they end up driving through a tunnel while listening to a song. In the middle of the story, Charlie's mental health and instability are a looping theme, as is his relationship with his Aunt Helen and his attraction to Sam. As the story goes along, his deteriorating mental health keeps returning to plague his actions. Flashbacks of his relationship with his aunt intrudes on his thoughts as it becomes more apparent that something egregious happened between them. And kissing or being kissed by Sam occurs on a cycle with emotions and meaning that continually change for the worse and for the better. He gets hospitalized for his mental health once more, and in the end, he leaves the hospital, joins up with Sam and Patrick, kisses Sam, and they drive through the same tunnel, listening to the same song. The loops in the middle of this story aren't a one-to-one recreation of each other, but they create repeating emotional reflections that the main character has to contend with and navigate as his life and worldview are altered throughout the story. Now let's try to simplify the idea by creating our own story. I want a character that learns to stand his ground against bullies, even though he doesn't become physically stronger. The mirror for this will have to be situational. He sees a friend getting bullied and turns his back on him. Next, we'll throw in the loops. I want the main character to be directly asked to help people at least 3 times throughout the story. Let's make it a fantasy story and say he gets thrown into a new world where he is expected to be the hero. He gets to the new world and is sent out to protect a village, but is attacked by thieves. A strange new friend comes along and tries to rescue him, but they both end up getting hurt and robbed. The main character thinks the new friend is stupid, but the friend thinks it's more stupid not to try. Next, he makes it to the village he has to protect, where he needs to stand up against a cruel hobgoblin. He'll make excuses as to why he can't do it and run away. Next, the hobgoblin will make an army and try to take over the kingdom. A lot of people get hurt. When his new friend gets captured by the goblin army, he's forced to step up and try to take down the hobgoblin, even though he doesn't have magic or strength to win. Working together with his new friend and a ragtag team of fairy tale creatures he encounters, they defeat the hobgoblin, and the main character is returned to his own world. He comes across another kid being bullied, but this time he jumps in to help. He and the kid both get beat up, and the kid asks why he tried to help when he was so weak. The main character says it would be stupid not to try. So in this example, we show how the looping themes of the story connect the beginning to the changes of the main character at the end. Ideally, you want your main character to repeatedly face physical representations of your themes at least 3 times throughout the story, with each encounter happening a little differently to show the progress being made and lessons learned. Cyclical stories can be extremely simple, like the joke I included in the introduction to this video. They can be extremely deep and nuanced, like The Perks of Being a Wallflower. However you choose to write them, cyclical stories reveal the patterns inherent in our world and help us learn, grow, and recognize the juxtaposition between the way the world should be and the way that it is right now. Are you going to try out cyclical storytelling? I hope your answer is sure. What the hell? If you liked learning about cyclical storytelling and want more from me about how to write, check out the video on top where I show you how to craft metaphor. Otherwise, click on the bottom video to see what YouTube recommends. As always, thank you so much for joining me today on CC Writes. I hope you enjoyed our time together, and I will see you later. Are you going to try out cyclical storytelling? If you're a little bit nervous about it, then don't say I give up. Just say God help me. How was that? I I mean, I guess I can wink. Are you going to try out cyclical storytelling? If you're still feeling a little nervous about it, don't say I give up. Just say, God help me. All right. I may not include that last part, but I thought it was funny.